All right, guys and gals, let's talk about Federalist number 31. Because if you've ever heard someone say the federal government should be limited so it shouldn't have broad taxing power, Hamilton would look you dead in the eye and say, that's not how governing works. Federalist 31 is one of those essays that sounds boring. Taxation, revenue, budgets, until you realize what Hamilton's actually doing. He's answering a core fear of the Anti-Federalists that the new federal government would use taxation as a weapon and eventually swallow the states, swallow the people, and turn liberty into a permission slip. And Hamilton's response is basically, your protection isn't crippling the government's tools, it's in the structure of the government and the people's control over it. Now, here's where this ties directly into the Second Amendment, because the Second Amendment isn't just a sentence on parchment. It's connected to the founders' understanding of common defense, the dangers of centralized force, and the idea that free people must never be reduced to subjects who can be financially squeezed into submission. And taxation, when abused, like now, can absolutely become a backdoor way of controlling rights. So let's break down Federalist 31 in a way that actually matters today. Federalist 31 is part of Hamilton's run in the taxation series, which is Federalist 30 through 36, where he's trying to convince New Yorkers that the federal government must have real, workable revenue power. Under the Articles of Confederation, Congress basically had to beg the states for money. Requisitions, you've heard me mention it already. And when states didn't pay, the national government had no teeth. And that created a country that looked independent on paper but was weak in reality. So Hamilton's saying, if you're building a real national government, it needs the ability to fund itself. And in Federalist 31, he narrows in on one big claim. A government responsible for national survival must have broad taxing power because the needs of a nation, especially defense, cannot be perfectly predicted or capped. So Hamilton starts with a very practical argument. If you assign a government certain ends, like protecting the nation, then it must have the means to accomplish that. And the key means is revenue. Basically, he's saying revenue is the engine, and if government is responsible for national exigencies, think like crises, war, threats, then it must have the full power to raise the money needed to respond. This is why he leans heavily on the Constitution's language that Congress can tax to provide for the common defense and general welfare. His logic is blunt. National problems are real, national defense is non-optional, and you can't defend a nation with empty pockets. So if the federal government is in charge of the common defense, it cannot be dependent on the state's goodwill to finance it. And here's the fear he's responding to. If Congress has broad internal taxation power, what stops it from taxing the people into poverty and turning the states into administrative districts? Look, we're all seeing issues with taxing right now, and it's not a crazy concern. Taxation is coercive by nature. Pay or else, right? Hamilton doesn't deny that. Instead, he reframes the entire argument. He says, stop obsessing over whether a necessary power could be abused and focus on whether the structure of the government prevents the abuse. And he drops one of the most important lines of the essay. He repeats the idea that worries about usurpation should be directed to the composition and structure of the government, not merely the nature or extent of its power. Meaning, look, set it up so that it's not really going to be able to happen, not worrying about what could happen. In other words, the safeguard isn't a crippled government, it's a government accountable to the people. He even points out something that people forget here. State governments also have broad powers. So what protects you from state-level usurpation? His answer was the dependence of those officials on the people, elections, accountability, and representation. He then argues the federal constitution is designed to provide the same species of security: separation of powers, representation, and checks. He also attacks a popular idea that just define a strict limit on federal taxing power. And he says that's a fantasy. Why? Because national needs don't come with a preset of boundaries. And how much does defense cost in a peaceful decade? How much in a decade of foreign threats or trade disruption or war? Nobody can tell. And you can't write a neat number into the Constitution and pretend future reality will obey it. So Hamilton argues that the power has to be broad enough to respond to circumstances, but checked by Republican structure. and not Republican versus Democrat, but the system. And that's the tightrope he's walking. Strong enough to function, restrained enough to remain free. And here's where people miss a tie-in here. The Second Amendment isn't floating in space. It's connected to the founders' broader architecture that a free society must be capable of defense. Defense must not depend on a permanent, unaccountable standing force. And the people must retain the ultimate insurance policy against tyranny. And whether you phrase that as deterrence or a balance of power or the founders' jealousy of liberty, the basic idea is power must never become one way. Taxation is just one of the ways that power can become one way, quietly. Now, Hamilton's taxation argument is anchored to the common defense. The founding era understood that defense included forts, ships, supplies, paying troops when necessary, and more critically, the militia system. The idea that the people, organized and armed, are part of the nation's defense posture. And that means that revenue and defense are linked. Even if the Second Amendment protects the right to keep and bear arms, a functioning republic has to fund defense obligations. Hamilton is explaining the funding mechanism that makes common defense real. Let's be real. The Bill of Rights exists because human nature doesn't change. Hamilton is making a Federalist case for workable power. But the Second Amendment is part of the American answer to the opposite fear, that power, if centralized and unchecked, can turn predatory. So, the clean way to connect this is Federalist 31 explains why government needs real tools to carry out common defense. And the Second Amendment reflects the founders' insistence that defense and security must never become the monopoly of the state. And that tension, capacity versus restraint, it's the heartbeat of the American system. And that's why representation matters. That's why elections matter. That's why courts matter. And that's why enumerated rights like the Second Amendment matter. Because a right that can be taxed into irrelevance isn't a right. It's a privilege with a price tag. And as we talk about the founders and the principles that built this country, it matters who you support with your dollars. That's why I drink Blackout coffee. They're unapologetically pro-Constitution. They believe in the same freedoms that the founders fought for and warned us to protect, especially the Second Amendment. We give a lot of money to the groups that are fighting for the Second Amendment, namely GOA, Second Amendment Foundation, Firearms Policy Coalition. It's not woke corporate coffee. It's not been sitting on grocery store shelves for weeks. It's premium small batch roasted coffee made right here in America, shipped to you within 2 to 3 days of it coming out of the roaster. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/G&G. Check out our offerings, different flavors, whole bean, ground, K-cup, teas, hot chocolates. Use code GNG10 to save some money. Support companies that still believe in the Republic, guys and gals. It's what this is all about. So Federalist 31 is not just tax policy. It's Hamilton laying out the logic of national power, how to fund the government's basic duties while insisting that the real guardrails are found in the design of the system and the people's control over their representatives. And when you connect that to the Second Amendment, you get a modern warning. A government that can't ban rights outright may try to administratively strangle them through cost, compliance, and coercion. And that's why we have to understand the founders' arguments here, not just quote them. If you found this breakdown useful, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and drop a comment below. Let me know. Do you think taxation and fees are being used today as a form of backdoor control over constitutional rights? What about luring centers? Because if Hamilton were here, he would tell us, watch the structure, watch the incentives, and never stop holding power accountable. Guys and gals, stay armed, stay free. God bless you. God bless America. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.